For this project, we will select an electronic health records vendor using a group's preference. This process involves communicating with different group members in order to gain consensus on attributes or characteristics that are found important in electronic health records, systems, or vendors. By the end of the project, we will have selected one system/vendor based on each group member's preferences. We will do this by valuing individual preferences. After inviting the group members to participate, we will conduct one-on-one interviews, hold a group meeting, score their preferences, discuss any differences, measure the vendor's performances, and document the process. I met with each expert or decision maker separately. The objective was to obtain each decision maker's preferences regarding electronic health records. From expert number 1, I determined that his top 3 characteristics included reliability, reputation, and cost. From expert number 2, I determined that her top 3 attributes included reliability, e-prescribing capabilities, and ease of use of the system. To identify the level of each attribute or characteristic, I asked each expert to determine the best and worst case scenario for each attribute. For example, expert number 1 stated that the best case scenario for reliability was 2 problem calls per year, and the worst case scenario was 6 problem calls per year. I also asked each expert to determine the intermediate levels. After the best, worst, and intermediate cases were determined, I asked each expert to determine the ratings. To do this, I said, for example, if 2 problem calls per year is a 100 and 6 problem calls per year is a 0, what is 3 problem calls per year? Expert number 1 said 60. I did this with each expert and each attribute. This is how I obtained the ratings you see. I then arranged the characteristics or attributes from least important to most important, according to the expert. To find the weights that you see on the left-hand side, I asked each expert, if the least important attribute is 10, what is the second important attribute? Then I asked, what would you give the most important attribute? After finding the weights, I standardized them so they would add up to 100%. To do this, I took the sum of the weights and divided each weight by the sum. The table you see here is what I took away from each interview from expert number 1 and expert number 2. After each interview, we set up a group meeting where we would come to a consensus. We had 2 different vendors to choose from, and based on what those vendors had to offer, I was able to quantify and value the 2 experts' preferences. We ended up with 5 attributes or characteristics total. They were reliability, reputation, e-prescribing capabilities, cost, and ease of use. We discussed what each vendor had to offer in their system. For instance, EMDs experienced an average of 3 problem calls per year, and eClinical Works experienced 5 problem calls per year. Sitting in a group, I asked each expert to write down a rating on a piece of paper for reliability. I asked, what would you rate the EMD system, which has 3 problem calls per year? We decided on a rating of 60. For eClinical Works, the group determined a rating of 40 for 5 problem calls per year. We did this for each attribute and obtained a group rating for each attribute. The attributes were ranked from most important to least important, and then a weight had to be determined. To come up with a weight for each attribute, I asked the experts to decide, if ease of use is a 10, what is cost? If e-prescribing is more important than cost, then what would you give e-prescribing? And so on. The weights are found on the table. I standardized the weights by summing the weights and dividing each weight by the sum. By multiplying the standardized weights by the rating for each attribute, and then for each vendor, I obtained a weighted sum. EMDs had a weighted average of 57.08. eClinicalWorks had a weighted average of 46.04. Because of the higher score from EMDs, the EMD system was chosen. Here, you can see the EMDs formula and the eClinicalWorks formula. All those numbers can be found in the table above. Participatory vendor selection is a multi-step process that involves psychological aspects. The 3 rules that I found to be difficult to follow but very important are: the decision makers must be asked to participate. The facilitator of the meeting must always steer the meeting without giving opinions, and the individual meetings must take place before the group meeting takes place. The interviews must always be conducted before the group meetings so that each decision maker can let his or her opinions and preferences be known without being judged or rushed by peers or colleagues. It also reduces any potential biases that may happen when other people are in the room. This vendor selection process itself is valuable because it quantifies the decision maker's preferences and gives a more objective opinion. Additionally, this method is easier to document, so when someone in the company comes along in 20 years and wonders how the vendor was chosen, it is very easy and very clear on who participated and what the process was that we used. In summary, this method is valuable because of its objectivity and documentation capabilities. Thank you.